Good morning, Laguna Woods. It's time for inspiration for today once again. Thank you for tuning in. Well, it's another great day and another time that we're going to look at a scripture. I love this show. I love it because, well, a good friend of mine is on, and it's unique because he's from not from Saddleback Church, but Grace Hills Church. And so I want you to meet my good friend Bill March. Good to see you, Bill.
Good to see you,
God
Rick.
bless.
Thanks.
Bill and I go back about, I heard you saying it's 15 years. I
Yeah.
couldn't remember,
Yeah,
but it was a long time ago.
it has been.
And I was interim pastor at a church called Tri-City Church in Vista.
hmm
And you were on staff of that church. What was your role?
So I was the youth pastor there for a long
Okay.
time, and that's when we met. We were in between senior pastors, and we roped you in.
And I worked pretty cheap.
You did. It's
No,
good.
I did, and it was fun. By the way, do you remember? This was not in our script for today.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the preaching series was when I came?
I believe it was the 40 Days of Purpose.
It was, of all things. And
It's
of
true.
course, I wasn't with Saddleback at the time, but
Right.
I had the privilege of preaching through the 40 Days of Purpose at
Mhm.
Tri-City Church.
Right.
Anyway, so we became, it's so funny how the
Yeah.
Lord works
It
in
is.
those things. I
It is.
never dreamed I'd end up here. And then, of course, that was down in Vista.
Right.
And now you are up at Grace Hills Church, which is on Moulton Avenue. And we're going to talk more about that church and your church tomorrow. But isn't it interesting how the Lord, and now we're both up here?
Yeah.
I know. Well, Bill, today we want to get to know you a little bit better. And you gave me a verse that we're going to start with, which
Okay.
was out of the book of Ecclesiastes. And it says, "Now all has been heard. And here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." I mean, this book, of course, is Solomon
Right.
thinking about what's important in life.
Right.
That was thousands of years, 3,000 years ago.
Yeah.
We're still, what's important in life?
Right.
Fear God and keep his commandments. So
Mhm.
I wanted to hear your
Amen.
story. Why did you pick that verse, or how does it fit into your story? Does it
Right.
begin back when you were a kid?
Yeah, in many ways it does. This verse has become a life verse for me because I love Solomon and his journey, not living life perfectly.
Yeah.
And yet at the end of his life, with all the wisdom he has, he looks back, kind of like a memoir in the book of Ecclesiastes, and looks back and goes, "Guys, here's what it comes down to. It's this."
Yeah.
And I like that as a storyline for living really on purpose, as we
Yeah.
mentioned, and living out our lives for Christ. So yeah, so that's where I am now with that verse and the journey there, and
Your
speaks to me.
journey of faith, though, didn't it start because your folks
Right.
passed away at an early
They
age?
did. They did. So I grew up in a Christian home. Both my mom and my dad knew the Lord, and so the journey with that was always in the church. My dad served as an elder. My mom was the pianist. She was my lap during the service, and when I was a little kid, and so yeah, that was the journey. And then when I was 8 years old, I lost my mom to ovarian cancer, and so the journey began with a death at a young age and not quite understanding.
Well, we always ask why, Lord.
Yeah, why is this unfolding? What does this mean? Is this normal? I don't think it is. How do I work through this? And so, again, because of a Christian family I grew up in, grandparents, both sides, and all that, I think the Lord was at the center of all that. And I didn't see it as how He was sustaining us.
Would you say, Bill, you were yet a follower of Christ?
Right in that window there. The funny thing is, I was visiting my aunt and uncle down in here in Southern California, and I think it was the milk and cookies kind of conversation at the table, and the question came up about, do I know Jesus?
Mm.
And this idea my aunt brought to me was, I know you know a lot about Jesus because you go to Sunday school and church and you're in a Christian home, but do you know him personally? And that got to me. And I remember moments later going down the hallway and sitting on the floor, closing the door, and praying to receive Christ because I never had really, like, hello.
Yeah. So you wanted to pray by yourself
I did.
rather than with your aunt.
Yeah, I just felt just the personal connection I needed to
Yeah.
have with God and just say,
Yeah.
look, I want you. I don't want to just know about you.
That's really interesting because I would say to the folks at home watching that a lot of times we think, well, we have to go to church or something to uh, start our walk with God, and that's just
Right.
not true. You can
Right.
go just like Bill. You can go in your room and
Mhm.
start praying to God and say, Jesus, I don't know what I'm doing even,
Yeah.
but I want to follow you, and
Mhm.
that's basically what you.
Right.
So then but you also lost your dad.
I did. So when I was 14, eighth grade, actually I came home from visiting my aunt and uncle in SoCal. I lived up in the Pacific Northwest and returned home, and I saw my dad. And he said, I haven't been feeling well, not sure quite what's going on. And anyhow, several months later, he passed away to colon cancer. And um, so at that point, there's a journey again
Yeah.
going,
Yeah.
this doesn't seem like this is supposed to be happening. This isn't normal. God, what is this you're doing? And trying to understand that. And, but I kind of knew at that point, even though I was in junior high, I have two options. I can either turn my back on God and say, this is all God's brought, is the death of two
I
parents.
know.
And in essence, which I didn't realize until years later, you're an orphan. I never thought of it that way,
Oh
never
yeah.
was brought up in my
Yeah.
household that way. Um, or I can trust him through it all. And that was not any, spiritual maturity per se. It just came down to that.
You mentioned another verse, which is Romans
Right.
8:28, is important in your life, and it seems to very much apply. I don't know, is
Right.
this
Yes,
where this started?
absolutely. As it
Okay.
says, and we know that all those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose. So there's
Yeah.
a premise there that we have to love God and pursue Him, but there's a promise that comes with it that God's going to work all that for good.
And
And
it's can I just point out
yeah,
that it's not all things are good.
right.
I know
No,
you
those
know
certainly
that, but
weren't. Yeah,
things aren't good,
that's right.
but he works them for good.
Yeah. And so the good that began to unfold with this was this is right before my dad passed away. My aunt and uncle were visiting. This is my dad's sister and her husband. And I just said, hey, if things don't work out for dad, can I come live with you?
Oh.
And so that was a request I had.
Yeah.
My dad had remarried, been remarried for a couple years when he passed away. I just desired to go live in Southern California by Disneyland and by the beach, and they had a swimming pool, and I thought,
We all go
that's
to this
good.
one. Yeah. I know.
So yeah, and so what's
Wow.
interesting about the good of how God works that out is they were never able to have kids, and so I became their kid,
Yeah.
past diaper stage, and so on and so forth. When I moved into their house, and that brought me to Southern California, and again, just their journey of going. She lost her brother, as we said, lost my parents, but
Wow.
then I
Yeah,
came to live with
that's
them
right.
and I became their kid. So,
And they were
um,
good parents to you.
oh man, they were
Yeah.
awesome. And in many ways, I mean, isn't
Yeah.
it interesting? She's the one who sat me down years before
It is.
and said, "Do you know Jesus?" And then I come to live with them, and so she's continues to be. They both continue to be just godly examples and mentors to me.
Bill, I'm glad you're coming back tomorrow because we're going to talk about how all this applies today. But just to repeat, everyone, the verse that
Mm.
for today is fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Life can get complicated. We know that according to Romans 8:28, it works together. God works it together for good.
Mhm.
Walk with God,
Mhm.
basically, and that's what
Amen.
Solomon decided. It's good advice for us today.
Yep.
Have a great day, Laguna Woods. We'll see you back here tomorrow.